Very good. Okay, so this is lab 3, right? And the first thing to do is to make sure you read the feedback I provided on lab 2, right? And pay attention to it. Even if you have 100% of the grade, there might be something you need to do. Always take a look at the feedback. That's very important. So we're going to use the resource sheet in Microsoft Project to create a resource pool. Can anyone here tell me what a resource pool is?
Resource pool.
Yes.
Material.
Yeah. What else?
Equipment.
Yeah. So everything.
And their using purpose means some manpower will be used in hours. Some material will be used in some units.
Okay. So yeah. So all the resources you're going to need for the project. So resources are people, equipment, materials, right, and even facility that you're going to use for your project. If you, we usually do, and some of them will be classified as overhead, but we're going to see that in a minute. So we're going to create a resource pool. So for your project, you figure out what you want and you create a list of that. And I'm going to show you actually how to do that. We are also going to talk about resource availability. So this is my file here. Let's take a look at where we are. This is the front view, right? With the entry table. Let's go to the resource sheet. That's where you create a resource pool. Now, these are my resources for my project, at least some of the resources that I'm going to need. Resources, as you know, we already talked about this. They're divided into 3 categories: work, material, and cost. See that? So I have some work resources, I have some material resources, and I have some cost resources. Now, when do you use work resources? You use work resources when you want to track time. If you want to know the amount of hours a resource spends on your project, working on your project, and that's a good type of resource to use, work, right? Now, with work, it's a little bit more complex because when I have work resources, I have to tell the software the availability of the resource. So is the resource available full-time, half-time, or any other availability, whatever the case might be? Some resources may be available 70% of the time because people have different work schedule nowadays. So that it's important to take this into considerations. Now, take a look here. I have the project manager. The project manager is working full-time. Project administrators, I have 200%. This means that I have 2 of them working full-time. Now, you could have situations where you have 3, 1 full-time and 2 part-time. If this was the case, you would need to add a resource note. You know how to do that? Yeah. A resource note, double-click on it, add a note in the resource information tab. Right? Very easy peasy. Okay, so that's that. Now for material, if your project requires material, I don't think you guys are working on any project that requires material right now. But if this is the case, you just to tell need to tell the software, how did you buy? Did you buy it per gallon, per quarts, per unit, whatever the case might be, and are you going to use it the same way? So if I'm using paint, for example, I can tell the software, you know, whether I'm going to apply half a gallon or gallon, what is the price per gallon? Yeah. So this is how the software accumulates cost in my project. So in order for you to accumulate cost, you must use resources. If you don't use any resources, there's no cost associated with the project, right? Resources cost money. That's the message here. And the cost type, second column here, the cost type is anything that is overhead. Travel, IT support, course, insurance, electricity, stuff like that are called overhead. Anything that is not material and that is not labor, people doing the job, you can classify as cost. Even the project manager, you can say the project manager cost is for that specific project, because if the project manager is working on your project full-time, and whatever we pay the project manager will be allocated to the cost of the project for the durations of the project. So that's what's going to happen. And in order for you to accumulate, you tell max unit here, maximum unit. That's what's the maximum percentage or capacity, number of people or units, it might not be people, assigned to a project. So that's why you see here 200% we agreed that would be to people, to project administrators. And then to accumulate costs, we need a standard rate. How much I'm paying those people per hour or per use. As you can see here, I have cost per use, I have cost per hour, I have overtime rate, etc. I don't think we're going to use overtime. If you want to, you can, when people work overtime. But in the US, overtime, the standard is time and a half. So if I work more than 40 hours, I'm being paid per hour. I don't get paid per hour. But if I were to be paid per hour, I have to work 40 hours first, or whatever the base might be. In some companies, the base is not 40 hours, it's 35. So any hours that I work over the base, they will pay me time and a half. In other words, if I'm paid $85,000 an hour, they will multiply that by 1.5 times. Yes. Okay, so that's the resource pool. The resource pool actually can be tedious to create. Think about a large project and you think about all the materials you're going to use, from wires to lumber to paint to nails to everything, and you would put everything in there. So that's a very it's a very good effort to create that. But once you do it, you're all set. When prices change, you can go and change the price, but you should be all set. Okay. So let's go back. So I create my resource sheet here. The resource pool is a list of resources that will need to carry out the project. You tell here whether people are working full-time, half-time, etc. So that's what we just talked about. Now, do you have any questions on that? All right, no, that's good. Number three, assign a standard rate for each resource as appropriate, right? So that's what I did here. That's the standard rate. I make sure I do that. For example, you see here, control system, $1,500 per unit. So when I use 3 units, that 3 times $1,500. So that's what we're looking at here. So this one, all resources, assign resources to all project activities. As we said earlier, if you have a project activity in your project schedules, means that that activity is necessary. The idea of activity-based management is to increase efficiency and effectiveness, and management is about that. If an activity doesn't add value to the project, it shouldn't be there, right? So for this reason, all activities must have resource assignment, except milestones, of course, and summary tasks. Summary tasks shouldn't have resource assignment. You should assign only to the sum. And I'm going to show you this in a minute. So now the question is, how do you do that? Now let's go to view. Now I'm going to show you how do you complete 4. Let's go to view, Gantt, and then here. So I'm going to add a column and I'm going to call it resources. Source name, right? So the resource name will help me see what is assigned to where. Now you can see that information again in the entire project. If you have resources here, they should be there. Now, what were we doing last time we were working on this? We were trying to recreate whatever we had in the spreadsheet. Do you guys remember where this spreadsheet is?
Project details.
Okay, give me 1 second. What did you say?
Project details.
Project details?
Yeah, you given some.
Okay. 1, 2, 3. Give me 1 second. This is practice 1, test. I think I'm working on this. Okay. Let's do it now. Let's do it now. I don't have the spreadsheet with me. So that's a very good thing, actually, that I don't have it, because I'm going to show you how to do it, manually. So create project charter. I want to assign resources to that. I can assign the project manager to the project charter and the project administrator, project coordinators. So I click on the task and I click on resource, right? And I click on assign resources. And I'm going to look for the resources I need. Project administrators. Now I'm going to use the Control or Shift button to assign the people I need. So I want the project administrator, the project coordinators, and the project manager to work on project charter. Now, there is something in Microsoft project called effort driven. Now, effort-driven scheduling technique works like this. If one person can do it in 5 days, and if one person working full-time can do it in 5 days, 2 people working full-time should be able to do it in 2.5 days. Does that make sense? That's effort-driven. So in project management, it means that if I assign one person to do a job, to complete a task, and I want to go faster, I wanted to reduce the duration of the project, then I would need to find someone else to help. Then by assigning another person, the software will ask me, what exactly you want to do? Do you want to reduce the duration of this task, or are more work hours required for the same duration? Does that make sense? So the software will want to know what the case might be. So if I don't want effort driven, when I'm assigning resources on a task, I have to assign those resources at the same time using the shift or the control button on my keyboard. So this is why I select all the resources I need on Project Charter, and then I click assign. So when I assign those people on Project Charter, actually I could actually do the same thing for prepare stakeholder analysis. And I want those people on the kickoff meeting as well. And I want them on high level planning. So those are the folks who will be doing project management activities. They are managers and administrators. So as you can see, when I take a look at the resource sheet in my project, if you want, you can insert a cost column to see how you're incurring cost. As you can see, the only resources that have a cost associated with them are the one I've used. I've only used the project manager, the project coordinator, and the project administrators. But that's why you see costs associated with them. And I'm going to keep doing that. And if you can see here, nothing else has a cost. The civil engineer, right, is full-time. Let's take a look to see what the civil engineer will be doing. Will the civil engineer be working on identification, site identification, funding of project development of technical concept, whether according to you want those people to work. Now, you obviously, the civil engineer will be working on constructions, but if you need the civil engineer to assist anywhere else, you just select that task and click assign. Now we're going to experiment with that. We're going to ask the civil engineer to work on setting up the site office, right? So I click on that and I click on resource, sign, civil engineer, assign here, right? Now it didn't have a cost before, but if you go back to the resource sheet, you will see the civil engineer now has some money assigned, right? Which is, that money is the product of how much money I pay the civil engineer per hour and the effort required to work on the site that I assign him to. So, or her, whatever the case might be. Now, construction crew, right? Construction crew. So let's take a look here. Remember, I'm just going to make sure that all my activities have resources. Let's go back. Where do I need my construction folks? I need them here. Let's say we're gonna need them here, and we're going to need them here, here, and here, and here, and here, right? You can just use the control button and then click on resource, assign resources, and look for the construction crew, and then assign. See that? So when you assign them, they will appear here if you have the resource colon, and then you're going to see it. Now, what do you have to watch for to have 100% of the grade? Is to make sure that every single resource, except milestones and summary tasks, have a resource name it. See that? Now, I'm not going to have anything on site identifications, but I'm going to have resources assigned on identification of potential site, funding, development. I must have resources on those. Does that make sense? Right? So for those who are online, I'm not going to have any resources assigned here, but I'm going to have resources assigned here. If I get all these done, this is done. That's what it means. If I complete the sub, then I complete the summary, right? So that's what it's been. Okay. So once I've done that, when assigning resources, it says make sure that activity durations remain the same. Activity durations will not change unless you use effort driven. In other words, you assign resources and then you assign resources again. So otherwise, if you click on a task and assign all the resources, effort driven only work for work resources. So in other words, if you assign all work resources you need at once, nothing will change. Durations will remain the same. But if you assign work resources and then you close it and then you assign it again, then you might choose to reduce the duration. So that's what 4 is about, or 5. Now review your resource of allocation and resolve all other allocation. Now let me show you something here. Now this is 6. Now if I go to the resource sheet, I can see I could have other allocations for any work resource. Now, let's take a look at the project manager, for example. The project manager, when you have another allocation, another allocated resource, it will appear in the indicator column as a red person. You'll see red person representing the head of a person highlighted, or something in the resource sheet highlighted in red. Then I'm going to show you an examples here. Usually resources are allocated if you assign them to activities that will occur in parallel, for example, the same day. And if each one of them requires 8 hours, and then you assign one resource to those 2 activities, then the resource will be asked to work 16 hours, right? So that's how you have, that's an example of where you have enough allocations. then you could say, well, instead of 8 hours on those activities the same day, why don't you work 4 here and 4 there? Right? You can do that, and I'm going to show you how to do it. So let's go back to the Gantt. Let's see the activities here that are going to happen in parallel. So let's say here, I select all these monitoring and controlling activities, and assign resources, and I assign these are project management activities, the project manager, the project coordinator. I assign those people. Now that's what an over-allocation looks like. That's a person in red. So it means that at one of those days, one of those resources, I can go into the resource sheet to see who those resources are, right? The project manager and the project administrators are over-allocated. You can check to see where they are over-allocated, because people work from Monday to Friday. So to see that, you go on resource usage. Here, I can close that. As you can see, project manager on this week, I have 8 hours a day, which means 8 hours a day. There's no problem there, right? So I can go here to see where they are. Here we go. See that? So in those days where I ask the project manager to work, I can see this. You know, no one will actually be able to work 40 hours in one day, because that's impossible. So in order for this to make sense, you have to fix your allocations, right? So there are different ways to do it. The project manager must do those things, right? So do you really need to delay the project for the project manager to do those work? Not really. You know, the project manager is going to do this with the project administrators, and they work on salary anyway. So you could, there are many ways to solve this issue. You could say the project manager works on a salary. There's no need to track his or her time. We're going to make it a cost resource. Or you can say, well, I'm going to try to see if I can spread the project. If you really want to track it, his or her time, spread the time over the project. And if you go on resource here, you can level resource. Resource leveling is about resolving of allocation to eliminate peaks and parallels. And if you click level all, when you click level all, then the project spread the time for you that the project manager does. So you can do it automatically by clicking on resource, and in the level group, you click level all, or you can level specific resources. But you should never, ever submit your lab 3 with over allocations. Do not submit your lab 3 with over-allocation. Always solve the over-allocations before you submit your line, right? So that's what you have here, and where the project manager, where you have 0 hours for monitoring and controlling activities, and who is doing the monitoring and controlling? The project coordinator. You have 5 of them, and they all assigned to the same activities too, right? Remember that? I assign all 3 of different categories of resources to monitoring and controlling activities. So when the project manager doesn't have time, that's why you have project coordinators and project administrators to help. Does that make sense? So that's the thing to keep in mind here. So how about so it asks you, when assigning resources, make sure that durations remain the same unless you want them to. Now, this is not something that I'm going to grade because I don't really care about that unless you have over allocation. I'm not going to see or pay attention to it.
In point number 5, it says review your project statistics before and after resource assignment. How to view project statistics?
Okay, so project statistics, project information, project statistics, and we just accumulating a bunch of courses. Before we started resource assignment, everything was 0. Everything was 0. We had dates, but we had no cost, right? So that's what we're going to go back to statistics, because this is important in lab 3. So I have to cover it anyway before the end of the class. Okay. Assign resources to all project activities that require resources. We've done that. When assigning resources, okay, review resource of allocations, we've done that. And we solve of allocation. We're going to switch to the Gantt chart view, apply a cost table, and note the total cost of the project. Now, you don't need to do that. You don't have to do that until you assign resources to all project activities. Right now, I'm going to give you the trick. Now, I'm going to see whether you do your job by going to resource usage. And when I go and look under unassign, the only thing I want to see under unassign are the milestones. If I see, for example, you have market assessment under unassign, so you didn't assign resources to market assessment, who's going to do it? Then your project is incomplete, you see what I mean? So that's how I check to see whether you've done the entire work. You see here, if I go to assign resources to all project activities, that's the instruction in 4. So if you didn't assign resources to all project activities except milestones, then it's incomplete. So you could lose a point or a point and a half, or you can gain all your points if, when I look under unassign, the only thing I see is this milestone, for example, right? So these are the things that I'm going to see under unassign, and I'm going to make sure the only thing I see are these milestones. I can't see the other one. This is the one, the third one. I have 3, right? So when I look on the sign, I only need to see the milestones. Do not assign resources to milestones because they do not require resources. Okay, so this is incomplete here, and you don't want your lab to be incomplete. So review your resource allocations and resolve allocations. We do that. Now we're going to go to the Gantt view, and we're going to assign the cost table and take a look at the cost of the project so far. So because I didn't use all my resources, and a lot of my activities don't have resource assignment, the cost of my project is only $5 million, right? So that's what I have now. So if you've done it properly, the cost of your project should be aligned with the name of the project, concentrated solar power. I can show you here the project summary task is task 0. And to see task 0, you click on Format and Project Summary Task. And task 0 doesn't show until you do that. But if you've done it properly, ID 1 is the project, and then you have all the major deliverable. So what they asked me here, I need to take what's the instructions. Let's go back and see. Switch to the Gantt view, apply the cost table, and what does it ask? Read this for me. What does it say?
By the cost table.
Yeah.
Switch to the Gantt chart view.
Yeah.
By the cost table and note the total cost of the project.
Okay. Yeah. And then what is the total cost you see here?
Here. Concentrated solar. Yeah.
Okay. So 10% of that, just need 10% of that. 506,000. 584. So 5% of that. Now that's going to be my contingencies. So contingency reserve is 10%, right? So you need to finish all resource assignments and then come here, take 10%. So let me show you something. View resource sheet. Do I have contingency here? I don't. I don't have contingency. Now the question is, do you know how to add contingency reserve? Calculate 10% and add the amount as contingency reserve to the project. Do you know how to do that? Not yet, but you're going to know that now, right? So let's do it. So let's go here, and to add contingency reserve, we're going to go to the resource pool, the resource sheet, and we're going to create a resource called contingency reserve, right? Oops, missing the E. And what about type? We want it to be a cost type. And so far, cost type, you can't type that $500,000 here. You can't do it here. So you have to choose where to add the reserve to different parts of the project, right? So the way to add reserve is to go to the gap view and find the entry table. The entry table is where you enter informations. That's what's called an entry table. So I'm going to add some money on development of rough technical concepts. I think that I might need some extra money here based on my experience. So that's how people decide where to add contingency based on identified risks where they say something might go on. Right, so I click on it and I click on resource, right? Assign resources. Remember, I created a resource called contingency reserve. Here it is. And then I'm going to tell the software that on the development of rough technical concept, I'm going to need a $50,000 reserve. You type the money here and you click enter. So contingency reserve now has a cost of $50,000 associated with it. And don't close it yet. How about needing some money in development of rough technical concept? Whereas contingency reserve about $65,000 here. Right? And I'm going to actually have some reserve in access wood. So I select access wood, and in contingency reserve, I type, let's say, 60 grand, right? And I close that. I didn't finish yet because I have $500,000 as reserve, and I need to make sure that I spread it throughout the project. Even if I don't use them exactly where I predicted that I would use them, but at least I have reserve, right? So view, resource sheet, contingency reserve. See that? It was zero. Now it is $175,000 based on what I entered. So what is the most common mistake in lab 3? The most common mistake in lab 3 is not to create a reserve at all, or create a reserve resource and not use any money. So when I take a look at your resource, if you have contingency reserve here, and then when I insert a cost column, it doesn't have any money, and I know that you didn't use it, because everywhere you see zero, so I didn't use those resources. Does that make sense? I didn't use the mounting equipment, the lighting, protection systems. I didn't use them yet. That's what that means, right? Remember, you incur cost when you use resources, right? Now, so let's take a look at the lab. 8, what do I add intake? 8, if you have developed your plan fully or as fully as possible, you should save a baseline, right? So when if you have no other allocation, all your activities have resource assignment except milestone. You have reserve, then you can set a baseline. Don't set a baseline until you have reserve.
Sir, I have a doubt.
Yeah.
For contingency reserve activities, we do not assign contingency reserve. First, we have to assign all the resources to all the activities,
Yeah.
not the contingency reserve activities. At that moment, we got total cost of the project, and that cost we have to calculate 10%.
Yeah, so the contingency, yes, is after you assign all resources you need. Contingency is the last thing you do.
So whatever amount we got, 10% amount, we have to assign that amount to the contingency activities.
Yeah, where you think you're going to need the contingency.
So the contingency part is a final part of all the activities.
Yes, the cost baseline is the cost of the activities plus the reserve. Does that make sense? So that's what it means. Okay. How do you set a baseline, guys? So to set a baseline, let's go and take a look here. Let's go back to project statistics, right? Project information, project statistics. As you can see, I don't have a baseline. The NA means what? Huh? Not applied, not assigned, whatever you want, so not applicable. But if you didn't add a baseline, that's how I'll know. I come to the project statistic for lab 3, and if you didn't set a baseline, half of your lab is useless. You can actually going to have half of the grade, but you need a baseline for the remaining lab to be correct, right? So always go back to project statistics to make sure you have a baseline before you complete your lab. So no baseline here. So however, if I go to project and I click on set baseline and set baseline here, and I make sure that set baseline for entire project is selected. So baseline for entire project. Right. Set baseline for entire project and click OK. Right. And let's go back to project statistic again. See that? Now I do have a baseline. And my baseline coincides to the start date of the project. In my case, is May 23rd. In your case, it's going to be April 10th or April 11th, whatever you entered there. All right. So having a baseline means that I have a baseline cost here, and I have a current cost. The baseline cost is based on my estimates. The current is based on what the software thinks the project will cost at the end. It's the same thing as some earned value analysis that I'm going to show you in a minute. I'm going to show you how to do that. So as you can see, current and baseline are the same. So when you have current and baseline the same, this means you have no actual values. Your project isn't underway yet. There is no gap between what you plan and what you're having because you're actually doing anything. You're not doing anything. But once you start working on the project activities, some activities may be completed ahead of time, behind schedule, and on schedule. You'll have different results from what you plan to have. That's just the way life is. And then you express these informations in the actual values that you report. This means that I'm actually having results that I didn't plan, or I'm having worse or better results. So that's what this really means. So let's close this and see what it is asking us to do. We set the baseline here. It asks us to mark all initiating planning activities 100% complete. So let's see how we do that. Let's go back to the all initiating and planning activities. So all these activities, it's saying, are completed. So 100% complete. So we select them and then click on tasks. And in the schedule group, click 100% complete. See that? If I click on it, now take a look at the indicator column. There's nothing there, right? But if I click on complete, there's a check mark near those. So, well, complete. So now I can tell the software, how did I complete it? How did I complete them? I'm sorry. So did I complete them ahead of time, on time, or behind schedule? So I can tell the software that. So how much money did I spend on them? Did I spend more than planned or less than planned? So that's what we call variance analysis. Is there a variance between what I planned and what I've done? So that's the questions here. Okay, let's do this. Now, let's take a look at our project statistics again. Bing, bing. We have some actual costs. See that? We spent $44,640 to complete the initiating and planning activities. Does that make sense? But is this really what happened? But no, let's tell the software. So let's tell the software. Now let's go to view table and variance table. And we can enter information here to tell the software differences, or I could go to the entry table and I can enter information here. Let's say finish. This is finish is the planned finish. And I can say actual finish. See that? This only worked for those things that I completed. For create project charter, I plan to finish on June 5th. When did I actually finish? So did I finish on June 5th? Before or after? So I can tell the software, well, I plan to finish on June 5th, but actually I didn't finish until June 12th. And for prepare project, I plan to finish on June 12th, but I only finished today. And the kickoff meeting, it's okay, I've done it today. Now you can also insert cost. Right? And you can have actual cost. So I plan, these are the money I plan to spend. Right? On create project charter, I plan to spend, remember what I change, only change actual. You don't change a baseline data unless you have an approved change request. Don't change baseline. You can only report actuals values that are different from the plan. Does that make sense? So I plan to spend $21,000 on project initiation, but actually I spent 25, and here I spent 12,000. Oh no,
In actual cost.
it's here. You have to change them here. 25 and 10. Did we say 10 or 12? 12. Okay. So that's difference. And for planning, we plan to spend 21,600. Let's say we actually spend 27,000. Now let's take a look back at our project statistics to see what happened to it. See that? Bang! Things are not the same. Current and baseline are not the same anymore. This means your project is actually your project might be a little bit over budget, maybe, you don't know yet, but at least if things continue the same way, it could mean that your project will cost, instead of 5,240,000, could cost 5,261,000. Right, you see that? So the whole idea of this assignment is to show that you understand plans don't usually go as, things don't usually go as planned. So there could be a difference. It could be a favorable variance or an unfavorable. But whatever the case might be, you understand this is a real situation here. You see that? So far, you don't have any schedule or finish variance. The finish variance is 0 day, but you can't have 0 schedule variance and 0 cost variance. At the end of the day, they want you to show that there is a variance, right? So that's why they ask you to simulate variance, right? So that's, if you take a look at using the tracking table, blah, 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 they ask you to enter actual durations that are different from the planned durations. And same thing for costs. So that would give you the variance that we talk about. Remember, you have actual finish, actual cost, actual duration that you can compare with planned duration, planned cost, and planned finish. Does that make sense? So that's what you do here. Okay, so, and we give you our project statistics, and based on what you saw, you can. Now, to answer the last question about, as you can see here, whatever I'm showing you here is already recorded. That's what those videos are. So you can always go back and check, right? So let's take a look at how to explain your project view. What is here? This is the entry table, more table. Let's take a look at the earned value table. Okay. Wow. This is crazy. Wow, this is really interesting information here. So we don't have a schedule variance, which is good. We're still on schedule, but we're doing actually not very well on budget. And what it is telling us, you know, things could go really, really wrong if we continue working with the same level of performance, right? So cost variance, is zero. When if you have a negative, no, the schedule variance is zero. I'm sorry. Yeah. So it's if you don't have a schedule variance, means your project is on schedule. If it is negative, you are behind schedule for whatever the amount of money that's there. And if it is positive, you're ahead of schedule for whatever the money that's there. Now, cost variance here, $15,400. That's your extra cost variance. It means you over budget. You over budget for 15,000. Your project is over budget for $15,400. Now, EAC means estimate at completion. BAC is the budget at completion. You all remember that's what the budget was before we start playing with the numbers, right? So estimate at completions, the amount of money the project will cost if you continue working with the same level of performance. So it is 8,743,832. And as you can see, the variance at completion here is the difference between BAC and EAC. It's going to be, that's going to be your budget deficit. If it's in a bracket, it's negative, and that's the difference between 8 million and 5 million. That's a significant amount of budget deficit. And obviously we exaggerated things. But if you had a project like that, that would be, something that the project sponsor say, do I really need to go on with this project just after initiating and planning? If I see that this is the trend, then I might not be able to afford it, right? So that's the thing about end value. The data, the indicators are not very reliable until about a quarter of the time of the project has elapsed from the execution phase. You need enough data for the indicators to be valid, right? So, but this is definitely, if you had, let's say, completed some executing activities, that would be those would be valid indicators. But right now, let's say that we don't pay much attention to this yet. And whatever is happening, we're going to have time to get back on track because we only completed initiating and planning activities. That's what we did. We didn't do anything else. And the reason we didn't is because if you take a look at the dates, let's go back to the Gantt view and the entry table. The dates for the other activities, they are actually in the future. So we're not there yet, unless we started earlier. So in addition to informations you create from this thing, what's important? One of the most important things is your judgment, your knowledge of the situation. So if you know enough of what's happening here, it says, well, you will know whether to worry or not to worry. So that nothing replaces the judgment of the project manager or the project experts working on this. Okay. So questions. Let's ask all your questions. I covered everything from the lab. He doesn't want to talk to you right now. You can't. Can you just leave him alone?
I was just asking any doubts to him.
No. So this is the actual cost that we spend to pay for this operation. contractors,
Yes.
resources, everything. And for the
For the planned cost? Or,
for the revenue. So where do we put the percentage that
okay, so,
So- like we put 15%, let's say, more than the cost that it actually will spend to do the project.
so the project management is a cost center. It's not a revenue center. So in other words, whether the revenue expected on the project will be realized, the project team will not know. So what the project team, as a cost center, the project manager can help the organization save money by saving on cost, right? So there is no need to worry about revenue because it is only when you deliver this to the market or when you sell to the market, you're gonna know what's the profit will really be.
So we need a different system to do the estimate with the revenue with that.
Yes,
So
I
this is
mean,
more on site for the project manager and the cost of the project is
yes, so the project manager and the project team will focus on the schedule to create the product and the cost to create it in terms of material you use, resources you use, etc. So the project manager can contribute and add value to the product by saving on costs. But from a revenue perspective, you don't really manage that because it's not really your concern. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
However, the project administrators, they collect all the information to provide in terms of detailed costs and contingency reserve. And they know if this project is going to be sold to a customer based on the cost, what is the profit margin is going to be. So if it is cost-based, if it costs me $100,000 and I'm selling it for 120,000, right? Then I know what's the profit margin is. But the project manager doesn't care about the 20,000, right? Does that make sense? So
Yeah.
that's the way it is. Questions? Yes.
So in step number 8, you created the baseline for the entire project.
Mhm.
So we have to create the baseline particularly in that step only, or we can create while we start working on the project.
You have to create it on the steps.
On the steps.
In other words, you set the baseline when all your activities have resource assignment, except the milestone. You have no over allocation, and you have calculated and have contingency in your plan. So those 3 things are extremely important. Resource assignment is complete, right? No over allocation. You can pay attention to under allocation as well. And then you have contingency in the plan. That's the only when you can set a baseline. Because if you set a baseline before any of this, anything you add after the baseline will not be part of the costs you're trying to control. Because the idea of a baseline is it's like taking taking a picture of you. You going somewhere, you're going to a party, right? And you well dressed, and you said, "Well, let me take a selfie," so remember this moment more later, right? But that's what the baseline is. So the software will remember this picture and compare later time to this picture. What is the difference? Do you have a little bit of wrinkles here and there, and that you didn't have, or you have different hair color, or whatever the situations might be? Yeah. Other questions?
Right now you are adding work type.
What?
Type resource to the
Work type?
activities.
Yes.
For me, can you add material type or other thing for any activity?
Oh yeah, you have to add all your resources. Yeah, because if you have resources, you create in the resources, you use, I added work resources, like the project manager, the project administrators, etc., the civil engineer, but also the material. I have to add all of them. I have a bunch of, actually, I have a bunch of project activities here. If you go on resource usage, that didn't have resource assignment, because I don't want to do this typing a bunch of this. It would take me more time than we have here. But what I'm saying here, the reason I highlight those things in yellow, when you look on the unassigned, you should only see the milestones. Let me show you. The thing you don't see on the unassigned are like create project charter, because they have resource assignment. Project charter, prepare stakeholder analysis. As you can see, they are all under the project manager. Resource usage view show you resources and the tasks to which they are assigned. And if you go to view here, well, let's say you go to view and I have resource usage, I have resource sheet, right? And if I go to task usage, if I click on task usage, you can see each task and the people who are working on them, right? So if I go to task usage, I see the list of tasks and the people who are working on them. Now, if I have tasks that don't have people working on them, they would, it's a problem. For example, you see this here, equipment acquisition. There's no one working on it. So you have task usage, list of tasks and the people working on them, and you have resource usage, the resources and the tasks to which they are assigned. So the best way to make sure you fulfill all the requirements of the assignment is to go to resource usage. See that? I have an electrical engineer, but I didn't assign the electrical engineer to anything yet. So that's why you see the electrical engineer without any resource assignment. Okay, other questions? Oh, 7:40, unfortunately. So questions?
Shall we add a single activity? Shall we add for a single activity both the resources like work and material? For example, install electric power. The activity needs electrical engineer, work type, and materials like cables. Yeah.
One single activity can have different types of resources. And I showed you actually a screenshot.
Asking that.
Yeah, and about paint wall, for example, that has painters, tapes and paint assigned to the same one, right? So you need a painter, a person to do it, but also you need material, and you could actually have all sort of different types of resources assigned to a project activity. Does that make sense? All right. Other questions?
Professor, do we need to add project coordinator when we are actually putting project manager there?
Where you have project manager, do you need project coordinator? Not necessarily. So you decide where your people work because they are your people and the project is yours. You are the project manager. So if you need project coordinators and project administrators to help project managers, that's the case to you. Not all projects are the same. So this project is a large project. So as you can see, I have many project coordinators and project administrators. In your project, for example, if it is a small project, you may not have project administrators and project coordinators. So these are not roles that are absolutely necessary. All right. Other questions?
Questions will rise when we are doing the same.
Okay, well, if you have any questions, as you were working on the assignments, do not hesitate to send an email or even post on Ask the Instructor on Canvas. There's a form like that.